Welcome to the online assembly for Rivers Week this week. My name is Lizzie and I work for Surrey Wildlife Trust. So that big logo on the screen there, that is who I work for, and maybe you recognise it as well in places around Surrey. So, like I said, it is Rivers Week, which means we are celebrating everything rivers. And the reason why it's Rivers Week is because it's World Rivers Day this Sunday, where over 70 countries around the world celebrate how important rivers are and the fact that you don't have to live near one to affect it, but also help it as well. So that's what we want to talk about today too, and just why they're so cool, especially here in Surrey. So before we dive into that, just a little bit about us. Maybe you've heard of us before, maybe you haven't. Surrey Wildlife Trust is one of the many wildlife trusts around the UK. We are in Surrey. We do education, which is what I do. We teach children and adults all about nature and how we can help it. But we also help on the ground as well. We have nature reserves all over Surrey where we help to look after these habitats, these homes for creatures and animals. And so we do lots of work, and that includes helping our rivers as well, because they are fantastic corridors for wildlife to travel in between all our wild spaces, which is why we like to celebrate rivers for Rivers Week. Now in the UK, maybe you guys have studied rivers already, maybe you haven't, but I'm sure you guys know of at least one big river that we have here in the UK, and that is the River Thames that flows right through London. And it is huge, but it's actually not our biggest river. The biggest river we have is the River Severn, which goes from, if I show you on the screen with my mouse, goes from Wales all the way out to the Bristol Channel there. And it's huge. It's like 354 kilometres long. So that is a ginormous river. And these huge rivers, they aren't just on their own. There's loads of other waterways around the UK as well. And if we zoomed into Surrey, which is where most of us are today, so this is where Surrey is around here, it looks like there's nothing there. But when we zoom in, have a look at those blue lines. All those blue lines, they look like veins. They are different waterways around Surrey. So they're streams and rivers, and all the little tributaries that run into them. So we've got so many here in Surrey, and in Surrey we have two big catchment areas, and that might be a new word for you guys. A catchment area is the whole area that when rain falls, it flows straight into streams that then goes into a bigger river. So for example, on the left-hand side in where Guildford is, we've got the River Wey, which maybe you guys have heard of. And there's a huge space around Guildford where wherever rain falls, that will flow eventually into the River Wey. And the same thing for maybe on the east side of Surrey, where it's the River Mull. Maybe you guys have heard of that one. And so whenever rain falls around Dorking, Leatherhead, Reigate, Red Hill, that all eventually flows into the River Mull. Okay, and in Surrey, we have some really special rivers as well. We are so lucky to have them. So we have, normally rivers start by little streams at the top of the hill that join together to become a big river. But in Surrey, we have something special called a chalk stream, and that's where the bottom of the river is chalk bedrock, and it allows water from below the earth to flow through the bottom. It means it's warmer, so better to wild swim in, and also it means it's clearer and cleaner as well. And it's quite a rare habitat that we've got here. Around the world, so the whole world, there are 210 chalk streams. But in the UK, so in England, we have 160 of them. And we have some of them in Surrey. And they're so special and rare, but we are, like with lots of our rivers, damaging them with pesticides from farms, from overfishing and damaging the banks, and also just by using too much in our homes and schools. Now, before we have a special video, we've got some very special creatures to meet. So creatures that rely on water here in Surrey and the UK. So let me see if you recognize any of them, because I'm not there in person. Normally I'd ask you if you recognize them, but put your hand up so your teachers know if you do know what they are, or if you're not sure, that's okay. I'll talk you through it. We've got this little creature here. It's an amphibian and it's called a common frog. This little one, it lives in water and on land. You might recognize the frog spawn that comes up in spring, but also these guys eat lots of insects and things, so they are pretty good carnivores. We also have reptiles that rely on water as well. This is a grass snake, not venomous, don't you worry. And actually, when they are scared, they just play dead. So they're not as scary as people think. And these creatures, they're called water snakes because they love to live near ponds and other waters like rivers, because they catch frogs and things to eat. And they can swim, which is pretty cool. We also have creatures like mammals that rely on rivers, like otters. They are incredible creatures to see. I love those long whiskers. And we used to actually have otters here in Surrey a couple hundred years ago, but because our rivers are what they used to be, they don't have as much fish, they don't have as much greenery along the edges. It's just not a good place for otters to live, but they do occasionally come over from neighbouring counties to swim in our rivers, and then they go home again. So maybe one day, if we make our rivers that little bit better, we could eventually have otters. Imagine seeing that on a walk. And birds also rely on rivers too. Now this looks like it could be a pterodactyl of some sort. It's a huge bird. It's not a pelican. It's not a stork. It's called a grey heron. And you might see these guys, most normally they are stood on the very edge of water like this one here, whether it's a river or a pond, and it stands very still waiting for fish to swim by, and then it grabs them. So they are pretty incredible, but they do look prehistoric, especially those feet. And lastly, this creature you might not recognise. Of course, fish rely on rivers too, and this is a very special fish. It's called a brown trout, and they're awesome predators as well. They eat other small fish, but they also eat flying insects, and they jump out of the water to grab them for food. And the reason why we've included brown trout today is because we have a really special video for you guys. It's been made for Rivers Week just for these assemblies, and it's all about a brown trout story and how we can help the brown trout and their friends too. So hopefully the video will start playing for you now.
Hello, I'm a brown trout, and I'm here to tell you how we can keep my river home safe and make sure there's enough water for all of you. We all need water. In fact, 60% of your body's made up of water, and your home uses 350 litres on an average day. But there's something bad happening to our rivers. With all the houses we heat, cars we drive, flights we take and food we need to grow, we are releasing huge amounts of greenhouse gases which are changing our climate. This is causing hotter, drier summers and creating heavier storms. There's not enough water in the river throughout much of the summer, but when it does rain, the storms bring floodwaters gushing into the river, which damages my home and floods your towns. Let me explain. This is the town near my river. It's a busy place and there's always plenty going on. Let's have a sneaky peek at what people are up to. It's important to brush your teeth, but hey, they've left the tap running the whole time, wasting all that precious water. They're off out. Oi, don't do that. That's a pretty garden being watered from the tap. That's a lot of tap water. And that's not good, covering our grass and plants with hard paving. Sorry, worms. These things are happening again and again in everybody's homes and gardens, and it all starts to have a big impact. Let's look at where this vital water comes from. The town gets its water from a pumping station. Did you know that much of the water we use is pumped from under the ground? It's called groundwater. Groundwater isn't just for us. It also feeds the rivers and is responsible for the majority of flow when it's not raining, especially in the summer. Rivers and their banks are so important as they form valuable corridors for plants to grow and wildlife to travel along and make their home, including some of our rarest species. The more water we use, the more stress we put on this valuable resource. If we waste water, we risk drying up our groundwater, which affects us, our rivers and our wildlife. But wait, what's this? It's a cloud, and it looks like a rain cloud. This should help. Oh no. With all our hard paved surfaces, the water has nowhere to go, flooding our homes and transporting our litter to other places, harming both land and river wildlife. Look at this poor heron with rubbish stuck on his beak. And lots of this rubbish eventually being washed out to sea. What a mess! Come on, we can do better than this, can't we? Let's go back and start this story again. Turn that tap off. Nice one. And in the recycling section. That's clever. They're now watering the garden from a newly installed water butt. This doesn't use up our tap water, it uses rainwater, which plants prefer. A win-win. They've removed some paving and are growing more plants, so water can absorb back into the ground and replenish our groundwater. Wow! If we all make these small but vital changes, we'll be saving so much valuable water. Let's see how our pumping station is looking now. All the levels are looking well balanced and in check. Our groundwater's looking healthy, which means much needed water flows to our valuable rivers, lakes and ponds. They are now as they should be, brimming with so much wildlife, including some of our rarest species. So if we all act now, we can help to protect our wildlife and our own futures from the impacts of climate change. And now it's time for me to get a wriggle on.
Wasn't that amazing and beautiful as well with all those creatures? But there were some really important messages going on there, and hopefully you guys heard them. Now, brown trout started talking about how we were heating our homes, we're using planes to fly on holidays, we get food from far away, and we drive our cars a lot as well. And this all causes things like greenhouse gases to be released into the air. Now, you might not have learned about this yet, but basically what those gases do is they make a blanket around the earth. And when that blanket covers the earth and we get our heat from the sun, that sun heat gets trapped inside and it can't leave. And it means our earth is getting warmer and warmer and warmer. And that sounds great, doesn't it? Sounds like we can have some nice summers, but it actually means that there's not enough water for rivers in the summer, especially when it's really hot. And not only that, it means that we have much stronger storms, and that means we have a lot more flooding. So that hurts our riverbanks and also our towns and cities too. So this isn't good, and this is all called climate change, and it's happening everywhere around the world, not just here in the UK. But there are things that are being done to try and help it. For instance, the big leaders of the world, like the President of the United States and our Prime Minister, they're all meeting in October, so not far away, at a conference called COP26. And they're basically talking about ways that they think they can help climate change and making promises to do so too. So the big people are talking about it and trying to help, but it's not just them that can help, it's us too. So us on the ground. And people like Greta. So maybe you've recognised her, maybe you heard her. heard of her before, but what she's done is she's just talked to people about why she wants to help the planet and nature, and she shared why she cares, and it's meant other people have listened to her too, and they've changed their minds about things as well. And that's what you can do. You don't have to talk to a huge group of people. Instead, just talk to your families, your parents, your friends as well. And if you just talk about why you want to help nature and why you think it's important, why you care so much, that can really make a difference, and it can change people's minds to maybe want to help nature as well, because nature is pretty awesome. And we can also do more than just talk to people as well. We can take action, and it's actions like walking to school more, so driving less, or maybe even just using public transport. That's really great. It means there's less cars on the road. We could fix things when they're broken. So instead of just throwing them away, try and fix them and use them again. We can make sure we buy food that's local. Next time you go on the food shop, have a look at where fruit and veg comes from. You think it comes from the UK, but some of it comes from Spain or even Peru, which is even further away. It comes from all over the world. And if we shopped with food that was grown in the UK, that will really help as well. It means our food isn't flown all over the world. So it's little things like that that can really make a difference if we all did something like that to help climate change. And if we help climate change, we help our rivers and oceans as well. But it's not just us too. Nature is working so hard to help climate change. We have our nature climate heroes. These guys, the ones on the screen, they are working so hard to suck in greenhouse gases and store them. So things like soil, plants, especially leaves, seagrass, which is under the ocean, and it's like a big field of grass there, and salt marsh. They're all different habitats that really suck in the greenhouse gases, and it means they're not in our air anymore, creating that blanket. So nature's working so hard. And if you want to learn more about them, they are available online, and there's even lessons you can do on them too, which is awesome. So they are our nature climate heroes. So that's all things we can do to help climate change. But remember, there's other things we can do to help our rivers as well. So Brown Trout said 4 key things to help our rivers. The first one was to do with the taps, and it's to save water. So we can make sure we turn the taps off when we're brushing our teeth. But not only taps, maybe we could have shorter showers, make it a competition, see who can have the shorter shower at home, but always make sure you use soap. That's very key. And you can also use a washing up bowl when you're washing your plates and things. That's really helps save water as well. But not only that, our litter was being put into our rivers, which then goes out to sea. So instead of just dropping our litter on the ground, no matter where we are, if we're in a city, a town, or the countryside, it ends up in our rivers. So instead, we can recycle them or put them in the bin. Better to recycle, or better yet, why don't we just use less plastic? That will help climate change, and it helps nature as well. So instead of maybe having a plastic water bottle that you buy every day, get one that you can refill. That will really help. And maybe if you are going food shopping, not only look at where your food comes from, but maybe go for ones that have less packaging. That really helps too. So we can use less water. We can make sure our litter doesn't go on the ground. It goes either in the bin or the recycling, or we just use less. The third point was all to do with paving, and how when we have paving or slabs instead of grass, it makes the water run off straight to the drains, and it means it reaches our rivers much more quickly, and that's how flooding occurs. So instead, if we make sure we have less paving, more green spaces of grass and plants, that soil that the plants are in is like a big sponge, and it sucks up all that water, and it helps stop flooding. So it's little things like that that can really help. But obviously we know not all paving can be brought up. So instead, have some boxes or pots of plants around, and that does the same job as well. And so if you have a look at your school today, if you've got lots of paving, maybe you could add little patches of plants around, whether it's in pots or big baskets. And lastly, there was a funny word that came up at the end called a water butt. Now, this is where rainwater flows from roofs, down drains, into these containers, and it's where we store rainwater. And that's what we can use to water our garden with. So instead of using water from the tap, we use the rainwater that we collect, and that saves how much we use. And also plants really prefer rainwater to the water that we drink because it's a bit different. So that's one way that you can really help save water. So have a look, see if you've got them in your school grounds today. And lastly, this is an extra one for you. Brown trout didn't say it, but this is a really important thing too. Maybe you could even make a small pond. It could be big like this or like a bucket. And having ponds means that water can flow into them, and it's a place to store it as well. So to stop it going straight to our rivers and causing flooding. And also ponds are fantastic habitats for wildlife. It's where dragonflies can fly over. It's where frogs will lay their eggs in the spring. And not only that, under the water, that is where there's lots of life. There's buzzing beetles around. There's mayflies swimming about too. There's all sorts of life in a pond, and they're amazing habitats. So that could help save water as well. And if we all did these little steps, we could have beautiful rivers everywhere. Our rivers would be healthier, and that's what we want. Because imagine if we could have an otter here again. That's the big thing. And maybe you recognize this place. It might be close to where you live, or maybe you're from far away. But this is somewhere in Surrey that is a really beautiful location. So that's a lot of points to get through, but there's lots of things that you can do to help water and climate change that we went through today. And if you do anything to help our rivers, let us know on our website at surreywildlifetrust.org/rivers. And there's a map where people are putting what things they do to help water and rivers after these assemblies. And when you fill the form in, your point will come up on the map. And instead of it being a dot, it's a fish, which is pretty cool. So definitely, if you do end up trying to save water, if you put more potted plants out, if you get a water butt to save water, whatever you do, put it on our map and let us know, because we love hearing how you guys get on. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Lovely. So thank you guys for joining us. If you did have any questions, obviously I'm not there in person today, but instead you can email the email address that we sent the code to. Your teacher can. If you have any, we'd love to answer them. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you are inspired to help rivers, and we can't wait to see how you guys get on. Have a lovely day, guys. Bye.